Okay, so you know how Bethesda is that video game developer who at one point was a true pioneer in the video game industry, who pushed the boundaries by making the most incredible games adored by fans all over? Then Fallout 76 happened and now everyone hates them.
Oh yes, it was horrible, I tell you.
Yeah, I'm beginning to worry that same thing might be happening at Game Freak. Pokémon, of course, is their baby, a turn-based RPG franchise where you explore a world filled with monsters to catch, train, and maim the ever-living shit out of each other. You teach me and I'll teach you Pokémon. Now, the franchise has been going since 1996, but I found that only recently fans have begun to turn. Because despite the fact that we are now in the series' 8th iteration of games with the newly released Pokémon Sword and Shield for Nintendo Switch, nothing could sum up these games better now than these 3 simple words. Same old shit. Yeah, there's a sense of irony here that Pokémon of all franchises is the one that refuses to evolve. And while Sword and Shield do make some welcome improvements, and I can't deny there is fun to be had here, it's yet another reminder that no other Nintendo series comes close to how stagnant and dated this one feels. Better bring a focus, Ash Game Freak, because this is gonna hurt. God, that's such a nerdy metaphor. Number 1.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Okay, so I'm first going to talk about the story and structure of this game. There's not a lot new to say here. Play a character who comes from a small town on a quest to become region champion.
Check.
8 gym leaders to defeat who clearly don't know how to battle because they all use the same bloody type of Pokemon.
Check.
Enemy team consisting of nothing but adults who keep getting their asses handed to them by a 10-year-old kid.
Check.
A mystery that pertains to a couple legendary Pokemon who protect and oversee their respective region, along with some douchebags who want to harness that power for their own nefarious deeds.
Check. Mate.
Yeah, now there's nothing particularly wrong with hitting these story beats, but we've been going through them over and over again for the past 23 years. And with the exception of the wild area, of which I'll talk about in a bit, these games where critics are actually praising them for how easy they are to get lost in, no, I'm gonna have to respectfully disagree there. Sword and Shield are amongst the most linear games in the series. Hell, Red and Blue were more open-ended than this, because there you had optional places to discover, like the power plant and Seafoam Islands. Note how Red and Blue never require you to go to these places. You visit them simply because you want to explore. And Sword and Shield is mostly devoid of that explorative wonder. There's no optional legendaries, no optional routes or caves, no optional towns and cities, and even the endgame quest has you just visiting places you've been to already. The only locations you get to explore here are where the game wants you to go. And whenever you do come across something that's a bit different, they don't do much with it. For example, there's a hotel room I stumbled across where a detective is trying to discern which one of 3 people stole some berries, and the game instructs you to go to each suspect to interview them about what happened. And I thought, whoa, is this like a genre-bending side quest? Like a whodunit mystery where you gotta cross-reference what they all say to figure out who's lying? But no, a bloody squaw vet shows up and the game just tells you it was him.
I confess myself disappointed.
As a result, the game's structure can get a bit repetitive. Go through a route, enter a town, beat the gym. Go through a route, enter a town, beat the gym, and so on. Again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but this is Pokémon. You know.
I will travel across the land, searching far and wide.
If there's one franchise out there that shouldn't be linear, it's Pokémon. So, is there anything about the campaign that's different? Well, to Game Freak's credit, they have played around with a couple things. Like how the intro to the game is a little more streamlined than before, as NPCs now ask you if you have knowledge of previous Pokemon mechanics. This way you can skip unneeded tutorials. Took you a while to finally implement this, Game Freak, but better late than never. Then there's your rival, who plays more of a pivotal role in the overarching plot, though was kind of interesting to see. The game begins with an encounter with your version's legendary Pokemon, which is admittedly a neat way to set the scene for your encounter later. And then you got the absence of the Elite Four, who instead have been replaced with a Tourney tournament format with other gym challenges. Which in hindsight, makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's weird how in previous Pokemon games, only you and your rivals seem to take on the Elite Four. Where were all the other challenges? So yeah, all those new inclusions are appreciated, but unfortunately, Pokemon still continues to play catch up to far superior stories found in pretty much every other notable RPG franchise. I mean, the plot pertaining to the legendary Pokemon isn't given that much depth. I mean, there's a legend and a chosen one story angle that's hinted at, but they barely do anything with it. And the writing is really about as standard as you can get, as all the dialogue here just devolves into either boring exposition, characters talking about how great they are, or characters talking about how great you are. It's to be expected from this franchise, I guess. I mean, you know it's sad when one of the most memorable bits of dialogue from these games is from a kid just talking about how comfy his shorts are to wear. Now, the characters that spew out this drivel here fare a little better, mostly because there's some memorable character designs, but all of them range from forgettable to just straight up annoying. Like with Hop and his unbearable enthusiasm, and now he keeps going on and on about how he will become champion, and how this next battle is another page in the tale of his legend. Oh god.
Shut the hell up!
But when it comes to this kind of bog standard storytelling, most games are able to inject a bit of character into their cast. And they do that by using something that Pokemon has always and still refuses to implement. Voice acting. This is something that Sword and Shield could have benefited so much from, and the game's direction makes the lack of voiceovers all the more notable in this Pokemon outing. Take a look at this. From the very moment the game starts, you're immediately thrown into a cutscene with a dude moving his mouth about with no sound coming out of it. Am I the only one who feels like we're watching a developer preview of the game, and the text is a placeholder until the voice actors are hired? Here's another example. This is Pierce, the Dark-type gym leader. I don't know if it's a coincidence that in a UK-themed game, they give the most evil-looking Pokemon of a guy called Piers, but that's besides the point. You see, there's moments in the game where the guy breaks out into song, but because there's no voice acting, we're just left with these awkward dead air moments where I guess we're supposed to make up a melody ourselves? Seriously, Game Freak, none of you looked at this and thought, you know what? Something's missing here. Voice acting would have also been a great inclusion during stadium events. You see, Sword and Shield put a big emphasis on the spectacle of gym battles, where thousands of people gather in these massive arenas to see Pokemon duke it out. But where are the commentators? Anyone remember Pokemon Stadium on N64?
Hammer shot! Perfect game! Wow! Take it down with one hit!
This game came out almost 2 decades ago, and yet these battles make more interesting viewing. Come on, Game Freak. And speaking of interesting viewing, you certainly don't get that during the game's story bits, as animation here is a right afterthought. What I would give to see anime cutscenes in a Pokemon game. You've done Pokemon Origins, you've done Pokemon Generations, you've done over 1,000 bloody episodes of the anime, and yet this animation is nowhere to be found in the main series of games. Instead, we get completely motionless character models who just stare into blank space when not speaking, and with there being perhaps like 5 animation cycles for talking, of which you get very used to seeing. I mean, seriously, take a shot every time you see Hop doing this animation cycle. Who the hell talks like this? Why, oh why, are production values of Pokemon games still so shit? Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise on the planet, and these games retail at full RRP. And they're on a home console now, remember? One that is actually capable of running pretty demanding titles. These games should have every last line voice acted, every cutscene should have an anime aesthetic, textures should be sharper, animation should be spruced up, and text boxes could look more interesting. Like they could do Persona style-esque profile pics and effects. If you're not going to add voiceover, then at least make the presentation more interesting. And what's weird is that, despite the game not looking all that great, there's some really bad aliasing going on here. It's not that noticeable if you're playing handheld, but playing docked mode, and you'll just see how horrendous the draw distance is, and the rather excessive compression and aliasing the game has to do to cope. But what about battle animations? You know how your Pokemon look and move when attacking? Well, you might be expecting me to berate the game here, as there's been many videos online showing off how lacking some of the animations are in this game. And yes, a lot of moves do indeed look rather unacceptable. But I think a lot of people are failing to notice how 50-50 this situation is. Because on one hand, you got this. But on the other, you got these. What the hell, Game Freak? If you can make your game look this good, why didn't you make all the game look this good? I honestly can't say why the overall presentation here is lacking. Maybe Game Freak weren't given enough funding. Perhaps the devs were pushed too hard to make the release date. Maybe they couldn't be bothered. Whatever the issue is, it needs to be addressed for future Pokemon games. Hire some voice actors, bring in more animators, increase Game Freak's funding. Just do what you need to do to bring the franchise into the 21st century finally. You have the resources, guys. Use them. Number 2. One does not simply walk into Motostoke. Okay, so the biggest new feature in Pokemon Sword and Shield, by far, has to be the wild area. Now, in previous Pokemon reviews I've done, I stated how much I've always wanted a fully 3D world to explore with full 360-degree camera control. And the wild area is just that. Technically speaking. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm glad Game Freak have tried something new here, but I can't help but feel disappointed by this place. Why? Well, it doesn't at all feel like what it should. That being a habitat for Pokemon. The wild area should feel like you're exploring a vast Pokemon ecosystem, but it doesn't. Instead, random Pokemon are just plonked randomly across the map in random set locations. None of them feel like they're part of the world. Like, remember Pokemon Snap? And now in that game, you really got a sense that these Pokemon live in these places. You had Metapod hanging from the trees, Dragonite rising out of a whirlpool, Gyarados blasting his way through a waterfall. Yeah, I want to see that kind of thing in the main series of games. The whole game wouldn't have to be like this, but the wild area would have been the perfect place to try something like this out. I mean, they try to shake things up a bit with the weather system, but this feels really off when you travel between the various zones, as the weather immediately shifts from sunny to sandstorm or to snow or to rain in like a second. It's immersion breaking to say the least. Okay, so the wild area is not much fun to explore, but what about the things you can do in it? Well, for starters, there's a new cooking minigame you can do. You can collect berries and various other ingredients from around the map to make an assortment of a quintessential British dish. The curry? It's ours now! So what do these curries do? Well, they basically act like a Pokemon Center, which is kind of redundant as you'll have plenty of money to buy healing items, of which recover your Pokemon much faster. They increase your Pokemon's experience points, but you're probably better off using the time spent cooking, just doing some more max raid battles for experience candy. Oh, but then they raise your Pokemon's happiness rating, which 99% of the time is pointless as the move return doesn't exist anymore, and only a handful of Pokemon in the entire game require their happiness rating to increase for evolutionary purposes. Yeah, it's nothing more than a side distraction. I honestly only bothered with it a few times so I could capture footage to show in this review. Okay, let's move on to the main thing you'll be doing in the wild area, catching Pokemon. And there's 2 ways you can go about doing that in this game. First off, a welcome feature from the Let's Go games have returned, as Pokemon once again appear on the overworld. Simply run into one to start an encounter. Again, I would like it if the Pokemon were blended into the world a bit more, But hey, it's better than random encounters. Oh, and I'm pleased to report that the transition from Overworld to Battle Screen is much faster than it was in Sun and Moon, which makes finding rare Pokemon in routes far less tedious. I still think it could be faster, and battles themselves can drag if there's a whole bunch of various effects on the field, like leftovers or weather conditions, but hey, we're going in the right direction. Now, the second method for catching Pokemon takes inspiration from raid battles in Pokemon Go. Enter max raid battles. Throughout the wild area, you'll find dozens of dens scattered about, and by clicking on one, you can challenge stronger than usual Pokemon with 3 other trainers, either offline with weak as hell AI companions, or online with much stronger real life players. Defeat the Pokemon and you can lob a ball at it. And these battles, I ended up enjoying about as much as I do raid battles in Pokemon Go. That's not a compliment. Yeah, I mean, I like the rewards you get from these, but there's 2 problems. First off, it's kind of a pain to get into them. You see, you can start a raid yourself by visiting one of the dens in your wild area, or you can use the Y-Con to enter someone else's raid as a guest. And for me, the latter proved much more fruitful, as there you don't have to use watts on wishing pieces, and there's also a lot more raids available. But I more often than not keep getting these error messages telling me that participation is closed? So if it's closed, why is the raid listed? This list just doesn't update enough, and I found that the only surefire way to reset it was to disconnect, then reconnect to the internet. It's a pain you have to keep doing this. But even then, these error messages keep coming up, which proves especially annoying when I see a raid for a Pokemon I don't have. I go in like, yay, new Pokemon, and then I'm like, oh, and then there's the battles themselves. Am I the only one who sees them as glorified button mashers? Simply look up the Pokemon you're about to face, enter the strongest Pokemon you got that's effective against their type, then spam your strongest super effective move. Done. And the 2 legendary Pokemon you'll catch in this game are all you'll need here. Use Eternatus as your default, as its Dynomax cannon move proves especially effective here, and then just use Zacian or Zamazenta as steel moves for fairy and ice types. As such, these battles turn into very passive experiences, so I found them best to do when I was just chilling, like when I was watching TV or something. God bless the Switch's form factor. It would have been interesting if the raids encouraged more diverse play. Like one player could be given direction to heal, and one player could be tasked to work on stat buffs, and only by working together as a team could you pull one of these battles off. But no, just mash A to win and use a potion when necessary. That honestly could be the unofficial slogan of a lot of Pokemon games, come to think of it. Number 3. Let the player win. Okay, to be fair about the whole difficulty thing, Sword and Shield do actually challenge you from time to time. Just not where you'd expect it would. Yeah, for me, the challenge didn't come from trainers, but from wild Pokemon. You see, in the wild area, you'll find some pretty high-leveled ones, and you might be like, so what, surely your Pokemon are high-leveled enough in the post-game. But you don't unlock the wild area in the post-game. You in fact get access to it before you even face the first gym. All of it. And from the moment you enter for the first time with your level 14 starter, well, I think most people's experiences will be similar to mine. You see an Onix off to the side, you go to catch it, and then you're like, oh shit.
What have I done?
Run! Yeah, this was so unusual to see in a Pokemon game. And as such, I decided to stick around the wild area for quite a while, leveling up my team so I could take Pokemon like this on. I got kind of annoyed that I couldn't catch them, as there's a new badge restriction mechanic that prevents that, but it gave me a goal to reach, which I kinda liked. If only the AI trainers were this tough. But they're not. In fact, they're often abnormally weak. Here's an example. On Route 9, there's a black belt trainer with a level 41 Graplocked, but on the exact same route, you can catch a level 50 Graplocked? Why are trainer Pokemon weaker than wild ones? What sense does that make? But there's a bigger issue here, one that's always plagued Pokemon games. You see, Pokemon you face in single player never employ the kind of tactics you see in competitive play. Now I have, and still continue to praise Pokemon's battle system. It seems ungodly simple at first, but on the competitive stage, it's great. It's a fascinating game of reading your opponent and switching up your playstyle on the fly. It's so good it even makes a great spectator esport, with Pokemon VGC, and there's some YouTubers like Shady Penguin who play it, and hearing their thought process about what to do next and what Pokemon they should use and when they should switch out, it's engrossing stuff. But I'm gonna say it, the Pokemon battle system in single player is awful! Because 90% of the time, it's always the same. Look at the Pokemon your opponent has, send out a Pokemon with the type advantage, knock them out in one hit. 2 max. And this issue is especially present during gym battles, as all the trainers still use the same type of Pokemon. Oh, fairy type gym? Okay, send out a poison type. One shot you, one shot you, one shot you, one shot... Oh, okay, this one survived. Okay, attack me. Well, that did fuck all. Okay, and 2 shot you, there we go. You know it's bad when your biggest concern during these battles is if you'll run out of PP or not. Now look, I know these are kids games, but the reason why I keep ranting on about how overly easy Pokemon is because online play is anything but. These games don't do squat to prepare you for online battles. You breeze through the story without a sweat, and all of a sudden, when you do go online, you see a whole bunch of battle tactics you've never seen before. Trick Room? Tailwind? Choice Band? Weakness Policy? What the hell is a Shuka-berry? I feel the game could prepare you so much better for this, by having more in-game opponents make use of the strategies human players use. It would give so many NPCs in the world more of a purpose, as now the only reason why I talk to everyone is just to see if they have anything to give me. But 90% of the time, they just say a whole bunch of nothing. I go to enter a building, someone inside says some boring shit, and I'm like, why is that building even in the game? To give an example of something the game actually gets right in this regard, head to Hammerlock. Here, a guy will challenge you to battle with a level 2 Cottony?
Okay. Goodbye.
So you hit him with your strongest move, but then...
Okay.
Then it hits you back with a move called Endeavor, and you're like, what the f***? Then you defeat the guy, and he explains how he used a focus sash to throw you off guard. Then he gives you one so you can use that same tactic in battles of your own. That is genius! It gives purpose to an otherwise useless NPC, it introduces a cool new mechanic you wouldn't otherwise know about, and it does so in an entertaining and creative way. Pokemon needs more moments like this. It just doesn't mean anything right now though, as the game never gives you a reason to use a focus sash during the campaign. Because now, all you need for single player are strong, speedy attackers. There's never any reason to use anything else. Only in competitive play does the battle system come alive, and then you can start using stallers and tanks and support Pokemon. I wish I felt the need to use Pokemon like this in single player, but all that would do right now is slow you down. I still stand by the fact that Pokemon is in desperate need of difficulty modes. Like a hard mode could introduce more intelligent AI, it could ban the use of healing items in battle, and it could also maybe even add a touch of level scaling? I know that's not a very popular video game mechanic, but I actually think it would work here. Not for every battle in the game, but just for gym leaders, I think. Make this an option for series veterans, so we can focus more on building well-rounded teams and strategies, instead of just focusing on leveling up Pokemon with the highest attack and speed stats and one-hit KOing everything. It would turn Pokemon into a far more rewarding and engaging experience. But regarding battles, Game Freak have actually introduced something new here to shake things up a bit. You see, on your adventure, you'll be gifted a Dynomax Band, which in certain battles will allow your Pokemon to grow bigger and glow red a bit.
Imagination.
So in this state, Pokemon's HP will be increased, and their moves will become more potent, but this effect will only last 3 turns. And I actually think it's an interesting thing to introduce to competitive play. In single player, it's pointless, but I like what it brings to the meta. You gotta be smart when to activate it. You can choose a stalling strategy to wait out your opponent's Dynamaxed Pokemon, or you can fight fire with fire. Dynamaxing is kinda like a cross between Z moves and Mega Evolutions, so adding this to the game makes up for the exclusion of those mechanics, despite Dynamaxing not being quite as imaginative in scope. Oh, and speaking of exclusions, number 4, 890. Oh, excuse me. There we go. So let's address the major controversy going into Sword and Shield, the exclusion of the national dex. Now, prior to the game's release, when this news broke, Pokemon fans were not happy. They took to Twitter to vent their rage. Gameplay videos on Nintendo Treehouse got downvoted more than a YouTube Rewind, and many fans actually boycotted the game in a desperate attempt to make Game Freak bring it back. And how do I feel about the whole situation? Guys, there's plenty of reasons to be annoyed with this game. I honestly don't think this is one of them. I mean, come on. You know this had to happen eventually. Had every Pokemon been included here, there'd be around 900 in the game. Hell, more than 1,000 probably when you take into account different forms and Mega Evolutions and such. What's so wrong with that, you may ask? Well, what's the original bloody slogan of Pokemon? Gotta catch 'em all? I ain't catching over 1,000 of these bloody things. Yeah, this feeling I had was more than present in Gen 5, 6, and especially 7. I personally always felt there were too many Pokemon in them. Too many Pokemon? What are you gonna do, rate those games a 7.8? Hear me out. Look, you would complete the local dex, and then when the national dex became available, all of a sudden you had hundreds more Pokemon to obtain, which meant crazy amounts of trading, backtracking, breeding, leveling up, countless swathes of Pokemon. It was overkill. Completing your dex in these games was a long and monotonous process, and I more often than not couldn't be bothered with it. But in Sword and Shield, only 400 Pokemon make the cut. Which, by the way, is more than 3 whole generations of Pokemon combined. I mean, come on, guys.
What, you wanted more?
And this smaller roster actually made me want to complete my Pokédex again. Such a feat felt achievable, and that feels good. Plus, the 400 Pokemon available here are spread quite nicely across the campaign. It's no longer a case of, catch 200 or so Pokemon during the story, then all of a sudden, hey, here's 600 more you gotta get. No, new Pokemon are always introduced in a natural, progressive way, and it helps the pacing of Dex completion so much. Now, I still understand why people are pissed off about this. Perhaps your favourite Pokemon didn't make the cut. Maybe you're a hardcore competitive Pokemon player, and you think this will make the meta less in-depth and not as rewarding an experience. I get the backlash, but for me, the game does not suffer at all because of its smaller roster. In fact, for me, it gains from it. But, quick deviation time, because as I was in the process of making this review, a new trailer dropped for upcoming DLC. Here, you'll get to explore 2 new areas, so that somewhat helps the lack of exploration in the main campaign, and they're adding an additional 200 Pokemon that didn't make the cut. Now, how do I feel about this? Well, I would be ecstatic if the DLC was free, but it's not. In fact, they're gonna charge us 27 quid for it.
Right.
Yeah, and this is from a company who at one point stated that paid DLC would ruin the worldview of Pokemon. So does that make Game Freak hypocrites? No, not at all. Because Game Freak have always been hypocrites. How so? Well, Pokemon has always had paid DLC. Yeah, it's true. In fact, Pokemon is probably the very first gaming franchise to make use of it. And this DLC came in the form of Pokemon Yellow, and Crystal and Emerald and so on, the third version of each generation. We can make even more money off consumers if we re-release the same game again. And then came Black and White, where they not only re-released the game, they did it twice. So this expansion idea is nothing all that new, it's just a more modern interpretation of it. And in actuality, this might work out better for us, as it would appear that Game Freak will forego releasing a second version of Sword and Shield. So like, Ultra Sword and Shield in favour of this expansion pass system, and if they do that, then this will work out cheaper for the consumer. But just because the system is better doesn't make it good. It's still 27 quid! I could buy a whole new game for that. No, I could buy several new games for that. So why, when there's a wealth of great interactive content out there, would I choose to fork over the price of a whole new game on expanding the experience of one I already have? So DLC woes aside, let's get back to the main game. And how do the new Pokémon on offer here hold up? Well, there's a lot I like. From the starter I chose, Score Bunny, who evolves into a dope-looking rabbit with a football soccer theme going on. Also, his signature move is a dope-ass animation. I had a Toxtricity on my team too, whose design I was also a fan of. Though I couldn't pin down why I liked his look. But then I saw this Reddit post by a user called JD Maz that gave me one hell of an epiphany. So that's why I like him. Though don't be disappointed, people, this generation of Pokemon has its fair share of oddballs. I mean, what the hell were they thinking? Someone put it out of its misery. Okay, look at this one too long and you may begin to see something that'll get me demonetized. Well, he looks like he's seen some shit. Octopus with boxing gloves! Okay, Derp Face is definitely going on my team. Hi. Okay, that's just a bloody apple. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that your auntie? Oh, and it's British themed, so you know they had to make a Pokemon out of a cup of bloody tea. Apparently nobody wants the shiny one of those, as that's the version where they put the milk in first. Okay, so at this point of the review, you might be like, damn, you've been a bit negative. What are you gonna do, give this game a 2? Well, if you ask me, there's a side to Sword and Shield which acts as its saving grace. Number 5. Okay, so if you watched my Sun and Moon review I made a few years back, you might remember me saying this. Now, absolutely, the biggest problem I've had with the Pokemon series as a whole is not that competitive fighting is bad, it's that prepping for it is a massive chore. Yeah, that has irked me for years. I have always wanted there to be a more fun and rewarding method of training a Pokemon's IVs and EVs. I've always wanted greater control of my Pokemon so that the monotonous breeding process can be avoided if at all possible. And while the whole competitive training system in Sword and Shield still could use improvement, there's been several quality of life updates here that make this whole process a lot better. Let's start with IVs. Now yes, you can still breed for perfect IVs, but hyper training returns as an alternative. However, in this game, it's much more viable an option. I found that bottle caps were easier to come by, and getting Pokemon to the required level 100 for hyper training is much faster, thanks to the experience candy you get from doing max raid battles. Also, 5-star max raid battles will guarantee the Pokemon you catch have 4 perfect IVs right from the get-go. So worst case scenario, you'll only have to use 2 bottle caps to perfect your Pokemon. This is great, and those guaranteed 4 perfect IVs makes a great start if you want to go down the breeding process. Now EV training is better too. Not because the method is any different, but because the game gives you a lot more money-making opportunities. You can use the What's in the Wild area to buy luxury balls and sell those for a decent profit. You can sell a whole bunch of treasure items like nuggets and pearls for a tidy sum. And if you played the game close to launch, you could receive a special Meowth for your mystery gift, of which you can use in Dynomax enabled battles to make bank. And all this money you make can be used to buy vitamins to quickly max out those 510 EV points. There's also a new feature in the game called Pokejobs. You can train EVs there too, which can prove effective if you're done with the game for a day. And the many berry trees available in the wild area allow you to easily reset your EV spread too. Also, ladies and gentlemen, Game Freak have finally added a much needed feature that I've been wanting to see in these games for 15 years.
I think I just peed a little.
Well, you don't change the nature, just the stat boosts associated with them at technicals. So, if your starter Pokemon has a bad nature, or maybe a shiny or legendary you caught didn't have the one you're wanting, not a problem, it can now be fixed. For a price. Yeah, the nature changing mints do cost a bit too much, I think. Plus, it would be nice if they were available before the post game. But hey, it's great the option is at least here. Oh, and even if you find out that a Pokemon you've been training up had a great egg move it could have learned all this time, not a problem. Egg moves can now be transferred from parent to parent. And speaking of moves, the Move Relearner can now be found in every Pokemon Center, and his service is free of charge. That's far more streamlined as well. So what does all this mean? Well, it means you can actually make any Pokemon you catch competitively viable. No breeding required. Well, most of the time. Yeah, unfortunately there are still two things that can hold back some Pokemon to the point where you would have to remove it from your team and start again with a new team member. First off, the often desired hidden abilities are back, and there is no way to switch your Pokemon's current ability with its hidden one. If you want one, you have to catch the respected Pokemon in its Dynomax den, and even then there's only a small chance it'll have the ability. I get that these abilities are hidden, but there's gotta be a more fun and rewarding way of getting them. Like, have your Pokemon win 10 battles in the battle tower and then a mysterious NPC appears offering to unlock your Pokemon's hidden potential. You know, something like that. And the second thing you can't change is a Pokemon's Dynomax capabilities. You see, some Pokemon in the game not only get bigger when Dynamaxing, but they can actually change their form as well, in a process called Gigantamaxing, which offers even stronger movesets. But like hidden abilities, Gigantamax Pokemon are only available in max raid battles. So if you've added a Pokemon to your team, only to realise it wasn't the Gigantamax variant, you've got to start over. This happened to me after I added a Grimmsnarl on my team, and I was so pissed after I realised it couldn't reach its full potential. Okay, let's say you've put together a team of competitive Mons. What can you do with them? Well, first off, in the post game, you'll find the Battle Tower, which like previous games, has you enter battles against AI opponents, and if you win, get battle points, of which you can spend in a store for a whole manner of goodies. Granted, the battle tower is quite simple, there's no unique game modes or anything to shake things up. I would have liked to have seen something more akin to the battle frontier in Pokemon Emerald, but the battle tower does at least act as a good testing ground for online play. Also, if you don't have competitive Pokemon ready to go, you can rent teams from this guy. And these teams are surprisingly good. You can actually reach max rank in the battle tower just using a rental team. In fact, I did just that. Oh, and speaking of rental teams, here's a really cool new feature Game Freak have added. You can actually now share teams you put together with other people online, and you yourself can try out teams other people have made. This is great for people who don't have time to competitively prepare Pokemon, plus it's an effective way to scout out potential team members. This way you can find out what Pokemon suit your battling style. It's brilliant. In fact, the online battle modes here are the best I've ever seen in a Pokemon game. Because for one, avatar customization returns, complete with a boatload of clothing and makeup possibilities, which along with a cool trainer card editor, allows you to effectively express yourself online. And for the first time in Pokemon history, you can now earn battle points and other rewards as you level up in ranked play. And you've also got various online tournaments you can enter too. Sword and Shield do indeed feel dated, but the online modes here definitely feel more modern. And if you're into competitive play, I think you'll really appreciate it. So that about covers everything. I'm conflicted. Pokemon Sword and Shield is yet another reminder of how stagnant this franchise is, but I can't deny I had some fun with it. I like the 400 strong roster, of which has plenty of memorable new inclusions, competitive prep work is much more streamlined, and the online modes here are great. But what holds Sword and Shield back is just another run-of-the-mill campaign filled with lackluster writing, an overly linear structure, a boring and unexciting presentation, and AI opponents who treat you like an idiot. Still, catching and training new Pokemon continues to be one hell of a winning formula. So, I'm gonna be more generous than I should and give this game a low 7. If you go into these games not expecting anything all that revolutionary, or you really dig the competitive scene, you'll have a decent time with Sword and Shield. But for those looking for a more fulfilling single-player RPG experience, basically look to every other notable RPG experience. I love Pokémon, I do, but I love it now more for its potential. Game Freak just don't seem to be willing to change too much about these games anymore. And so for the future, I would like to see Pokémon in the hands of another developer. A team like Atlas, for example, to help shake things up and give us a more mature Pokémon adventure that has a compelling story, a non-linear structure, and a more challenging campaign. But I fear that Pokemon's strong sales numbers are giving Game Freak more than enough motivation to keep doing what they're doing. Well, on that sour note, I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, so I've added a bunch of new perks to my Patreon page, so if you're interested, head over there and take a gander. The more support I have over there, the more I can focus on making YouTube videos, so if you're supporting me over there, thank you so much. In the meantime, I'd like to thank my top supporters, Stephanus Sujputra, Timothy J. Kilner, Lord Jackson, Jacob Matthew Crawford, thank you for your reactions, man, Joey, Thomas Wright, Lieber9999, Gregorio Vasquez, Saul Montague, and Cal Queen. Oh, and Christian Lishka, who changed on over to a top tier patron as I was about to upload this review. Thanks, man. You guys' support has been unbelievable. Thank you so much. Thanks again for watching, guys. Adios.